so exciting at this juncture.
So, Aurora banned again by FPX. No surprises there. Locking in the Renekton for ZDZ. Power in the top lane. It's something we've not really seen for ZDZ throughout this series, but he gets it for game number 4.
ZDZ, of course, he really has been the mercenary of the top lane. His Renekton, not the best win rate through summer, but it's definitely a pick which he's used to great effect throughout his entire career. It's just very stable. Hoya has not really been playing that well in the individual 1v1 versus EDZ to the level which they needed to. Now, this might be a change for TT. They have hinged on 1xN's Ezreal. That's not an Ezreal, that's a misfortune. More wombo combo, still lane dominant.
So, 1xN changing tack here. I mean, I guess you can't E forwards on Misfortune, so that's good. We'll see if that'll be the difference maker for him. As Care, 2 MVPs back-to-back. He's up against this Tristana. Corki has been the comfortable answer throughout the year. I would not be surprised yet to see that locked in once again. So Corki and Renekton, you'd probably want an AP jungler. I'd be amazed if a Yasuo is locked in here.
Well, we saw it from Nady in the nice rival stage. Actually, it's okay against the double AD characters.
Right?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. But hey, I just want to say, justice for Yasuo, I guess, a little bit. It's going to be the Lilia in once again for MilkyWay. I think the Lilia has been MilkyWay's best jungler across summer. Weirdly, he's not necessarily transferred well over to the carry jungle meta, considering how much of a carry he was in spring, but the Lilia has allowed him to be a teamfight menace, an individual menace, and also have that fast clear speed as well. Beichuan, is he going to go back towards the brand already, or is he going to do something a little bit different? This isn't a jungler. Hoya expected to take this Poppy. It's one of his better tanky top lane picks.
It's pretty good against the Cassante, typically. And it can be good against the Renekton, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily like the matchup for Poppy, that Renekton. We'll have to see how it pans out. Now to the bans. A lot available, especially in that support role, but also Deokdam's AD carry not yet locked in. And that will be the focus for TT as Ezreal is taken off the board and Ivan immediately gone.
Wanting to get rid of that ability to just set something up in front of Misfortune. So yeah, we need to see what's going to come through, particularly from those support roles. We could see Feather hold that support counter pick. Again, that was one of the huge factors in Game 1 for TT walking away with that game. Deokdam and Life went towards the Caitlyn Braum. They assumed it would win lane. It did not win lane. They have themselves, the TT, the Misfortune on that bot side now. I think realistically they'll want to support counter pick and see if they can get themselves a really good lane of pressure down there to once again deny Deokdam and Life their presence on the map.
So the brand gone. And now TT, it's decision time. Where are we going with this composition? You've got plenty of damage, you've got a bit of front line. Up in, you'd assume the top lane. It's, I guess, possible Feather to take the Poppy, but it doesn't seem likely. Could go towards the jungle next, but maybe you round out that bottom lane. They have liked this support counter pick. I guess we have seen a lot of support counter pick across the course of this series so far. Beichuan goes Nidalee.
So, this would have been great in the last draft. Beichuan had great setup with that Renekton and the Leona in the last draft, but he chooses to pick it now with the Poppy, which is very inconsistent setup. You do potentially have something like Feather's Alistair could be very powerful here, or the Nautilus as well for big setup there too, but it's not the easiest draft when it comes to playing that Nidalee in terms of your own team composition. FPX, they're now going towards something very different. They go towards that Ziggs and the setup of that Maokai. Maokai not the strongest laning champion, but works perfectly for the combo.
It works perfectly to just not be interactive in the bottom lane, right? Just play, disengage. Don't want to try and fight that Misfortune. Just want to try and play at range, and then should Lilia make her way down to the bottom lane, then maybe we'll consider fighting the Misfortune. Leona has made it all the way to R5. How often do you see that in LPL? TT, this is their last composition unless they can make it work. Let's see if they can button the strengths together of this comp. Like you said, not the greatest setup for Beichuan's Nidalee. But Beichuan, a 50% win rate over 4 games on the pick across this split. He's got a carry. Now he needs to make that carry work.
Also, I think on a mechanical level, I've been impressed by Beichuan's Nidalee. I know it is a hard champion to pilot. We give out Nidalee passes for this reason. You have to be so good mechanically at this champion to make it work. I think that Leona getting through is that last pick, very important. I think there was a bit of a mind game going on with the Leona, but the Braum's still available. You don't want to blind pick it. So for some reason, Leona, who has been first pick and ban worthy throughout this year, ends up being the last pick of this draft. Is it the pick which ThunderTalk need to bring this series to a potential silver scrapes? We shall see. I think FPX, they have had weaker early games, but their macro, as soon as they start getting unlocked onto the map, has been far and away better than ThunderTalk's on the whole. TT, will they lean harder into the early game, make use of their strength to try and overcome that before that macro comes into play? We'll have to see, but with the Nidalee, you have to expect some fireworks early on.
Certainly expecting action, expecting fireworks. Remember, we came in saying these are two of the bloodiest teams in the LPL in the early games. They've certainly been chaotic so far. I hope Game 4 can live up to that. But for FunPlus Phoenix, this could be their ticket into the next round of playoffs. This could be their ticket to keeping their dreams of worlds alive. TT, one last chance to keep themselves in the mix.
欢迎来到英雄联盟。
So let's see how it all goes. One thing I want to know, why is 1xn's 0 better than all of his teammates' 0 in terms of gold on the scoreboard? He's apparently ahead in lane.
True.
The rest of the gang. Oh no, it's the other way, sorry. It's the other way. It's Deokdam that's ahead. Everyone else is...
one except letting the team down. I mean, so, remember that route? So, folks, if you didn't play during this time, there used to be a rune which I believe gave you 150, or like an extra 50 gold at the start of a game. You used to get something like that. There was a rune which gave you... There was, yeah, for a brief while. You could actually get a little bit more gold at the start of the game. Deokdam, he's well out of sorts here.
Yeah, it was a good sidestep on the Zenith Blade, but the fact that you're there to have to sidestep is a bigger whoopsie. Deokdam, not the way he wanted to start this game.
And now Beichuan, he's going to get himself first blood, 400 gold in pocket. Now, when Beichuan gets to the end of his first clear, he's going to have a really good back to start accelerating this game off of. We'll see which build he goes towards. I think Beichuan is one of the players that's gone towards Blackfire Torch into Leandries and using his W as poke, which means you can go towards that Fated Ashes as your first back. It's much less about that Lich Bane. We'll see whether he can get value out of that. At the end of the day, Nidalee builds a Nidalee build some AP, job's a good one, and you'll start shredding people if you hit those spears, if you're accurate enough with them. Still, not exactly what FPX wanted out of already ropey early games.
Yeah, I mean, really tough for that. It's kind of unforgivable just walking up at level 1. Deokdam hasn't had the greatest series. I'd say he's had a middling series. You know, his Kaiser in the previous game looking pretty decent. Like, he's had some good moments, but the laning phases, as you say, haven't been the best for him. It has been 1xn and Feather having the advantage down there in the bottom lane. The level 1 death is certainly not helping in his corner here. But we'll see how the laning phase goes. He's on that Ziggs. He should be relatively safe. Didn't end up using his flash, so hopefully for him, it doesn't lead to too much. However, Beichuan getting first blood on Nidalee is just so potent for TT. He'll be very happy with how it started.
Have we really seen 59 games of Corki Tristada this year?
I don't even find that hard to believe, to be honest.
I know, I just know. That's not me. Let me just clarify. That's not me saying, wow, that's so many games, I didn't expect it. That's me going, wow, we've really sat through 59 games of Corki versus Tristada.
So this is the big 6-0. It's a big birthday.
Oh no.
Is it a big game?
Oh my god. Do we get a pension yet for, we're 60, do we get a pension here for watching this video?
UK pension's like, I don't know, 84 at this point, isn't it? I don't think 60 is anywhere near.
It is far too high. Look, I'm sat here as, I've sat here in my mid lane for a long, long time. I've been playing Ari for as long as I can remember at this point. I don't mind a little bit of AD carry play in the mid lane. I do mind when there's 60 games of this same goddamn AD carry matchup in my mid lane. Get it out of here!
Yeah, I don't think you're... I think you're sort of preaching to the choir, to be honest. With I don't know if you saw the interview from Rookie and the response from Yagao. Yeah. Just say, like, mid lane belongs to the majors. Please get these AD carries out of here. Let me play the game I love. Oh man,
Look,
it's
if
so
it's going to be an
relatable.
AD champion, at least give us like some Zed or Kiana. Not, again, they could be obnoxious when they're too far ahead too, but when there's any one class of champion which kind of invades a role when it's not been there for a long time, a lot of the traditional players of that role just kind of sigh and they say, okay, right, guess I'll learn a new role. Mid lane's probably one of that's probably the role which has had the most of this. We've had tanks, we've had AD carries. We currently have a jungler in the top lane. That's a bit more usual.
Spear, flashed away from by ZDZ. I swear that was the last possible second. I thought that was going to chunk him. ZDZ survives and continues to try and push that wave in on the top side. I have to say, you know, of all of the, you were talking about the things coming into the mid lane, of all of the things to come into mid lane, like, I think AD carries are already the most hated role within League of Legends. I think AD carries as a role give Cassante a run for his money in terms of being hated.
I mean, Quinn top lane, Vayne top lane, yeah.
As an AD carry main, I know that that loathing that people feel towards us.
I think there is an argument to say that Banner commands are rot tanks. That was an era which I don't want to see back. So maybe I'd say for that specific point, there have been moments where tanks have got into my grill a little bit. MilkyWay getting right in here now. Ucal jumps in.
Big damage from MilkyWay. Flash away from Ucal. Chunked as well. I mean, everyone's just chunked on the back of that one, but nobody ends up going down. So Ucal had to flash. That's just about all that comes out of it.
So Ucal, another bold jump in early game mid lane. We have seen a lot of these from the man in the mid lane. Blue hair has been waving the banner for his team. Doesn't necessarily want to see that banner hit the ground quite as soon as the games it has done for a lot of these early game plays. There have been questions about the value of the Tristana. It's much less lane dominant than it was, but plays like this don't always give us the best read on what the champion could do. Of course, Kev, fantastic on this pick in the game before it. He's even in this lane now as well, so I think he'll be happy with that as it stands. Checking in with some other things across the map. Of course, we do have the lane dominance of the Renekton in the top side, but Hoya, I think he's doing fine here. Of course, the flash away from CDZ means that Hoya is a lot more safe to potentially look for a flash wall stun onto him, and that means that he can also look for some plays a little bit more easily out of that top side. And we haven't really seen, of course, Beichuan get into a lane as effectively. Again, he got that first blood and got that flash in top side. Really want to see exactly what he can do around that one item spike, because he is in a huge point of power right now, and we did call this out beforehand. Beichuan has been a very good mechanical niddly. He's already shown it a little bit in this early game.
And TT lean on their sort of habits across this series as they continue to focus on the early Drakes. Much higher priority on them than the Herald. I wish, the Grubs. I really wish we had Grub stats. That's my biggest gripe with this year in general, that we've not had any stats about Grubs to work with. But I guarantee TT's is one of the lowest. Nice little W there from Hoya.
Well, extra damage done to towers with Grubs specifically. I'm such a sucker for numbers like that, man.
Yeah. I just honestly, Grub percentage. How much on average do you get in a game? I think that tells you a lot about how an early game goes for a team. And with the Dragon percentage that TT have, you'd assume their Grub percentage is pretty low.
Something that we've talked a little bit about LPL as a whole, actually, is sometimes you can forget about the big changes which come to League. One of the biggest changes we had was the change from double Herald to those Grubs, and then the second Herald coming in much later into the game.
Yeah.
And I think LPL as a whole struggled a little bit to deal with those changes. Double Herald was in the game for such a long time that it was very well practiced what to do with them. It's taken a while for some of these teams to make the most out of the Grubs. It's very obvious what to do with 6 Grubs, but some of the nuances I don't think have necessarily been explored by some, particularly the mid to bottom table teams. So that's something which, we probably do need to have a bigger look at in terms of all of our teams holistically. Yeah. How has the LPL adapted to this?
And we've not got that much more gameplay of this version of League of Legends each year. Right, it does tend to change one or two things. Grubs came in this year. We'll see if they stick around. We'll see if Riot's happy with that after Worlds. It's going to be LPL playoffs and then Worlds to see our LPL teams using that and seeing what maximum efficiency ends up looking like. Speaking of efficiency, we are pretty much dead even in the game, and when it comes to lane efficiency, who's getting ahead right now? 1xN with a bit of a CS lead, but at Misfortune, you kind of hope to get a bit of a CS lead with the amount of pressure you can bring to that bottom lane. But then equally in the mid lane, Care well ahead, over 10 CS up in that individual 1v1.
Yeah, don't exactly know how it's even come about. I guess Ucal losing that flash doesn't help. I will say, Hoya's doing fine in this top lane as well. In every matchup, you have a kind of margin of error to work with when you say, okay, if you're 10 CS behind, that's fine. One of the ones which was like that for a long time was Veigar in the early game because he has 0 wave clear and basically nothing to lane with. At some patches where if he was within 10 CS of you, you actually lost that lane. I think a similar thing can be said of Renekton on the other side of it. If Renekton, because he's such a lane bully, is not 10 CS ahead of you, you got a bit of a problem. So for now, ZDZ is fine.
Unless you're
but
playing.
We do need to.
Quinn
Yeah,
or
you see this a little
Hyper
bit more. Okay, that's true. Yeah, true. Yeah, okay, but that's when you get into the weeds of, look, I'm trying to make this small point like, wow, yeah,
sorry,
Jerry's
I really
yes,
shouldn't
when you're
derailed you
playing
at
against
the
a
end
top lane Vayne or a Quinn, it's not very fair. I understand that, Joe. It's just one of the nuances of League of Legends.
I don't believe in
Let
nuance.
me be clever.
Call me Twitter user number 7 because nuance is not something I typically lean into. TT though, forgetting nuance, move up towards this top side, looking for grubs. I don't know if they'll really contest this one. Life has roamed up as well as Hoya's actually down on the bottom side. Both bot lanes have moved up to the top side. Neither TP available for our top laners. Could be a bit of a 4v4, but it's FPX in the river currently.
Yeah, I mean, not having Renekton for an early game fight sucks. Hoya did push the wave in first. They can walk up now. I think this actually might be fine for TT to walk towards this. You really don't want to give over maximum grubs this time around. Corki good at hitting towers, Ziggs very good at hitting turrets. However, FPX are in the river first. Renekton is going to be slow to the play though.
I mean, MilkyWay manages to grab one. Honestly, surely you're happy with that. TT trying to move in. FPX look like they do want this fight. Hoya trying to be pushed out the bottom side of things as Life commits really hard onto Hoya. Hoya's pretty tanky. He's in a 1v2 on the backside, and there's one down. Bullet time across the team as well. And TT have found 2. Feather trying to get out with his life, and the flash will do exactly that. ZDZ can't find a way in, and TT, they find 1 grub, and they find 2 kills.
Yeah, Joe, you were completely right about that. Surely FPX should have been happy with just that first grub being taken. They overstay. They're the ones this time which overstay a little bit too far into it. They give over some extra kills, and TT walk away with some extra gold in pocket. They should be able... Well, actually, I'm not sure if they'll be able to return for this last grub because the play went so long that they didn't stick around for that last one after this point. Problems of Maokai, again, seen this multiple times this series, can get flashed into your team. Bit of a miscommunication there as well with the Ziggs. Hoya plays this fight so magnificently well. Gets the extra kill with the bomb on top of the head, and then gets Renekton out of the picture. This is one of the reasons why Hoya on the Poppy has actually been a big force. I don't really like seeing him on the Renekton all that time, but I do think this Poppy is something he's shown real mastery of.
I mean, Hoya has got 5 games on the Poppy top across the split. It is his 2nd most played top laner with a 60% win rate. This will be his 6th game. And right now, under a bit of threat in the top side as Life sort of threatening a dive. I don't think there's anything who's really going to come up this one. Not with the support Maokai and a Corki. I don't think you're diving Poppy anytime soon, but it will be a 2nd Drake. In the meantime for TT, as they continue to stack those objectives. Hex Soul, once again, it's potent souls in this series, that's for sure.
So, you know what's probably bigger than the soul itself is the map. I think that because we've got this macro difference between the teams. I think FPX have been the better macro team than TT. You have to start wondering whether those gates make it easier for FPX to turn up to a side lane quickly and decisively, or is it easier then to use the Hex gates to respond to those decisive plays from TT? Either way, it affects the way that the whole map is played out. Can TT use it to their advantage in a way that they haven't been able to do so for the rest of it? That's what I'll be looking at later into this game.
Keep our eyes on those Hex gates. It's a Leandri's first for Beichuan. You mentioned the niddly kind of jumble sails we sometimes see in the jungle. Beichuan going for frontline damage, going for throwing those spears, and almost completed his jungle item. You can see 1 stack to 8 stacks on the opposite side of that jungle. Beichuan having a pretty decent series for himself, considering he's up against MilkyWay. If you consider expectations for these 2 players back in spring, like, you wouldn't expect Beichuan to exist at all.
That's true. I think that's probably worth taking a step back and thinking of. We've got 40 seconds till Herald, so we have to keep it a little bit sharpish, see if one of these teams really goes towards it. But yeah, I think that at TT in spring, they were not playing at this level. I think Beichuan, Xinjiao Merchant, he wasn't necessarily getting himself good games there. I think he's done well on the AP junglers. I think he's done well on Nidalee, Lilia, Brand, and I think he's been a big part of the reason this team stepped up, similar with 1xN and Ucal finding good form as well. Yes, this series will have some questions about it. Again, you don't have to take the head off for that one, but we have 10 seconds till the Herald now. FPX do control this river, and that's a nice spear onto life.
Nice chunk. So far, so good on the spears from Beichuan on this Nidalee. And again, we're waving. I say we, like we're waving that Nidalee pass card. I definitely am not qualified to decide who is and isn't allowed to play Nidalee. Let's be honest, I'm not the guy for that. But TT going to start Herald off as a TP comes behind enemy lines from ZDZ. FPX want to force the fight, but Hoya TP's into the play as well. Is he there fast enough is the question. Steadfast presence as the Herald goes down. TT have the objective, but they can't get onto the eye, and FPX are trying to chase them down. Everyone commits onto ZDZ. 5-man queue, but the healing's not enough. A kill for TT, but Herald denied.
So, teleports used in the top lane as kill, but no Herald. That's really important. Remember, FPX have the 5 grubs, so they already have tower killing potential. TT, they have much less of that. They do have, of course, the Tristana in the side lane, which is a very good tower killing threat, but the Herald could have been a huge thing for them to break open the map. So FPX, even with the kill loss, I think they'll stomach that play for now. The Herald denied is big.
And yet another kill to Beichuan. 2-0-2 on the Nidalee. Let's take another look, because honestly, the deep TP from the Renekton scared me to start with, but Ucal just 1v1's care to start it off. And Hoya's ult as well, just it's really difficult for FPX to group up.
Just think about the difference in the frontline potential of the Renekton for Hoya in the last game and then the Poppy for this one. Hoya is so much more impactful on this Poppy, and that's one of the reasons why Hoya has had a better split. He's been going towards more stuff like the Poppy, which has been very impactful for him and allows him to play a frontline in the way that you can't necessarily do with more of your bruiser archetype champions. So we come back out onto the Rift. We have a minute and a half until that Dragon. TT, as we've seen for all of this series and for a lot of their games in Summer, they have focused very heavily on those Dragons. It would be a Hex Soul point if they were to get that one. However, they could also choose to forgo that one and take a tower in the side lane and get some more gold onto Ucal if they don't feel like fighting there.
Wouldn't be averse to that, honestly, with how FPX have been able to take control of those side lanes and take control in terms of the towers. It does feel pretty valuable for TT to try and get some control of the map instead of going for the Drakes. But then again, Hex Soul, you can just get to Soul Point, that's also pretty damn valuable. Not to mention the fact that you've got this misfortune, like you're quite happy to really brute force fights beyond the level 6 mark. In fact, we're heading towards the level 11 mark, so that bullet time will be leveled up once again. It's only a single item on that misfortune, but I will say, a single item on misfortune, a lot better than a single item on Ziggs.
It hurts quite a bit, particularly with the Bloodthirster W interaction. That's a teleport down towards this bot side. So this is something which LNG pioneered in this split. If you want to take side lane turrets, you have one pushing lane, and then your other solo lane teleports to it. That's what Care does here. ZDZ starts pushing in, Care teleports in, bam, first turret down, you have those 5 grubs. This is, I consider this an LNG special. Good to see that this macro kind of easy tip to use to break open the map, though, is starting to flow through the rest of the map, though.
But Hoya removes one of those solo laners from the equation, and as such, the minion wave slowly whittled down. FPX don't have any minions to push with, and the tower will survive for the time being. They're still going. Look at all these mites, and finally a cannon arrives. And the tower will fall, but it's traded. Tier 2 for Tier 2 with a 4-man commit from FPX, but with Drake spawning, it will still end up being positive for FPX overall.
Yeah, so this is obviously the extra added bonus for FPX. To get themselves the Dragon, they focus on the bot side of the map, but we were saying, okay, TT, they didn't have to take that that Dragon if they didn't want to. It is just the one Dragon on the other side. They can start getting some damage elsewhere. Tristana on mid-turn, can they take this? The backdoor bonus just about to come on. They just about get it. So, you know what? I would take this if you're TT. You get a load of gold for just one Dragon going the other side.
I mean, look across the scoreboard. 2,000 gold lead for Beichuan as he was a part of the tower takes on that top side. Got 500 gold lead for Ucal. Minor gold lead in the bottom lane. It's not substantial. ZDZ is caught in the jungle, and TT just eviscerate him. Gets a bit of sunburn from Feather on the way out of the play, and a bit of real burn from the Ignite as well.
Yeah, that Croc's going to have to go below the water surface again. Gets a little bit burned up. So FPX, they commit to this 5 grub push, but TT, good cross-mapping for them. We have criticized TT for their macro in this series so far. This was a good series of macro plays. I think this is going to work out massively in their favor. Adding on to the tower tally, they even get themselves this bot lane opened up. And I think one of the things which is helping with this, remember what we were saying before about, hey, is the Hextech map going to be helpful for one team or the other? I think it's helped TT. They've been roaming to these side lanes really, really effectively. Got themselves a load of turrets, and FPX, despite having the 5 grubs, have not been able to open up the same kind of map advantages we've expected earlier in the series.
And I wonder if that conversation of the Hex map is more a conversation of it throws off the tempo. If you're really good at standard macro, Hex map kind of ruins those timings for you. Makes it a little bit more difficult. I don't know how Feather got that kill, to be honest. Was to survive the bomb on 1 HP. As FPX now moving to the top side. Crab will be grabbed by 1xN. I mean, it's Baron spawning in 40 seconds. I don't think either team is really in a position to try and force anything there. It's a 3,000 gold lead for TT off the back of these macro plays and off the back of this absolutely absurd lead in the jungle for Beichuan. And he is going full artillery Nidalee right there with a Horizon focus alongside his Leandries. He's playing for max range chunks.
Yeah, it really reminds you of the Nidalee of old, doesn't it? The Season 3, Season 4. Throw a spear and the crowd goes, ooh, and those max range hits as it scales up in terms of that damage. This is now Beichuan's chance to again, reaffirm his Nidalee pass ownership, whether he can get those spears in those important moments. You do have the Leona and the Poppy in good points of power for themselves to get themselves onto the board. I think this will lead into another conversation too. Nidalee is ahead. I also think another question which we were saying before was what happens with the Renekton? Is the lead large enough? I think we are seeing now, no, Hoya is a level up, is completely fine with the gold disadvantage of only being 400, 500. It's not meaningful enough. So I think TT, they have themselves a good point of power to play through now. The Renekton's not an issue. The Nidalee can combo up well. No one's really pushing you around the map that much. So TT, the question is, how are they going to use these points of power? You have those matchups going well for you. You still need to leverage them though. Maybe it'll be around the Dragon in 2 minutes.
Remember TT, they're fighting for their tournament lives here. It's 2-1 in favor of FPX. And in game number 4, backs against the ropes, they find themselves an advantage. Can 1xN not walk into the enemy team in mid lane? Only time will tell. Beichuan and Ucal though start off the Baron. His life has to be the one to try and face check. MilkyWay's here as well. They suspect something's going on, and a bomb flying in should be enough to dissuade TT.
Yeah, the jungle Soraka value coming out there too. The Primal Surge giving some heal. FPX have to use an ultimate for that though. That's a problem. You don't have that for a fight.
Big damage on life. And that Maokai just ain't tanky enough. Easy pickup. And honestly, I think a little overzealous from life. Where else would TT be?
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't see him on a midway. Where did they cease to exist?
I don't know, maybe Jeff Goldblum got it wrong. Maybe life doesn't find a way, and this is going to be another potential pick.
Oh dear.
Better I cut on the other side. This teleport, that's a good Primal Surge there. That might give him enough HP.
TT certainly are moving in herds in this one. Staying as a group as Beichuan caught. Deokdam takes a chunk in return, but it's very short range. He will survive. FPX. Man advantage for the time being as Hoya tries to move into the play. Chunk TT members. Wasn't sure if it'd be enough to start Baron.
I think the problem is FPX, they're moving too much. The TT Rex, it only spots you if you move. Its eyesight is based on movement. Drag it up in 30 seconds. Let's see if we're going to have ourselves a prehistoric clash down here towards that dragon.
That never saved the guy on the toilet, did it? The T-Rex bit the building
True,
apart,
yeah.
So I don't know if I trust Jeff Goldblum on that one. I don't know if I trust Jeff Goldblum at all, to be honest. You know, I've never met the guy. He's an actor. I feel like actors are inherently untrustworthy.
We're asking the hard-hitting questions here. So
is Jeff Goldblum trustworthy? Find out in the next episode of the LPL.
Well, he was a chaos mathematician. We'll see how much chaos we can bring to bear here. It's one of our specialties here in the LPL. This could be a game-changing fight. Do we have big summoners available? Yeah, mostly we do. I don't think ZDZ's gonna have the easiest time. That's gonna be an easy dragon going up the side of TT. No fight even presenting itself.
Sole point for TT. And in trade, FPX want this mid tower, but Engage comes out from Feather. He's tanky, walks away with his life, dodges the bombs. Nicely done there. TT will be very happy as they defend their mid-tier 1 tower. They get themselves that Drake. And as little fighting off the back of it as possible is really their goal. Oh, never mind.
And there you go. Got it down into the satchel range. See that little icon above it? I only just spotted that myself. But FPX will get themselves something there. Reminder, earlier in the series, we were saying that FPX were the better macro team than TT. That was definitely the way that it looked. And TT, this is not the largest lead which they have lost with in this series. That is quite an important note. They have had big leads and at least big strategic leads. When they had the Smolder, I think that's worth noting there too. The Smolder was scaling and they couldn't win with that either. So this is now getting into the point where TT will have to prove themselves that they can get to this point of power. they can get to this point where they can start pulling off these big combos and actually walk away with a win.
I want to point out something, because, you know, earlier I mentioned that TT had a 40% win rate when they were at a deficit at 15 minutes. They only have an 80% win rate with a lead at 15 minutes. So, you know, 1 in 5 games they throw is essentially the conclusion of that statistic. It's not a great statistic to have on your side here, for the side of TT. Perhaps they could hold on this time, though, when it matters the most, when this is the culmination of a year of work for TT. And players like Ucal, players like 1xN have been able to separate themselves. Ucal struggling perhaps a little in summer, but I don't know. It would just be such a disappointing end to their run. And also, the last team from the Nirvana group, they want to prove that that lower group can contend here in playoffs.
Like I said, Nirvana's greatest hits. It's their last hurrah. Let's see if they can make something special of it. I mean, this is the problem with LPL playoffs, and for those of you who are being introduced to these teams a little bit newer, if you're tuning in just for playoffs or something like that, we are seeing some of the best from these teams across this series. I think we're also seeing the pressure take its toll a little bit in some moments too. I think TT, I've loved watching the way that 1xN has developed from an LDL superstar to one which can genuinely be LPL caliber well and truly. I think he showed bits of that in 2023. I think I'm absolutely convinced of that now. I think Ucal has been a huge player for this team too. Beichuan stepped up. So a lot of names you can call out there from TT. Heck, even Feather, he's developed well as a new player too. On FPX's side though, yeah, it's really hard not to get behind MilkyWay's story, one of the best debut splits that we've ever seen in the LPL, God, even worldwide. And as a team, they've had to overcome changes in the top lane, some irregularities in some, and leading to some really difficult scenarios for them. They had to sub in different players in and out in that top lane, and for them not to capitalize on that spring split, not to get into that top 4 in spring, and not be able to go beyond the first ring in Summit, I don't think that would do justice there either. But that's the problem with the LPL. We have so many teams with these kind of stories. It's really hard to see who's going to do it justice.
Feather caught, trying to trade onto Life. There's other bullet time, and the bomb traded, but Life walks away, so does Care. It's a kill for FPX. That's all they'll get. They walk away limping from the battle.
As the bullets and the bombs come out, and you can see that 1xN. I'm not quite sure if he got the bullet time angle right there, but Life gets out all the same. That's a big set of ultimates down from FPX now, though. Wards are going to be cleared. TT onto the Baron. They don't have a Leona. They don't have a bullet time. What have they got?
Hoya trying to buy space as 1xN is here as well, but Hoya chunked, and that's a 2-man sleep as well. Flash from 1xN to keep himself safe, and Hoya, that's the flash as well. FPX Punisher. Pretty reckless Baron attempt.
This is one of the worries here for poor old TT. They have not been that great at setting up these real massive draft wins, the macro wins rather. They've been playing around the map to the point where they can get some fights, but FPX have been playing the macro better. I think you can see that right there. TT slow things down, they can't quite get the fights which they want. There's a minute now on Dragon, Baron's going to be up at the same time. I don't think that's going to work out in their favor. Having 2 big objectives up basically means that you can force the trade between them. They do have that sole point. If they go towards the Dragon and FPX go towards the Baron, they will have the advantage in that one. And of course, in the other side of it, they can give up a Dragon on the other side because FPX will just be their second one.
Can they win a straight-up team fight is the big question as well, because the gold lead is really not significant anymore. We're almost 30 minutes into the game. It's less than 2,000. It does feel like we are just looking at individual carry items at this point as Drake spawns in 20 seconds time, and TT would love to fight for Soul, but they don't have control right now.
So, let's see how this all comes to bear. TT, they can give up the Dragon, like we said, it would only be the second one, but they do have an Italy. That's definitely not going to be easy to bring into the late game. I guess you can say it balances out with a Renekton on the other side, but they would love to get themselves a big fight right now. Summoners pretty much all available. 1xN's crucially are down. That could be a big moment.
Feather trying to start an engage. Bomb just onto him as Hoya buys space and time. The bullet time is pretty huge. 1 down. Back. Dragon taken, and TT get the soul. It was Ucal with an auto to find the Dragon. ZDZ survives, and can they go Baron? Can FPX try and rush the Baron?
They potentially can, but Ucal has teleport, and the Hex Gates will help TT get towards this later. Also, not many ultimates left from FPX. I think it would be actually quite bold for them to go towards this. Without that big Maokai ultimate, you can struggle to get a lot of that setup. They're going towards it anyway. No Hoya, less frontline. Can TT win against less ultimates?
They have a lot of damage to try and burst this out. Feather has to be the one to check. Beichuan would love to get in, but he doesn't have flash available. And the bombs from Deokdam just deny everything. The spear can't land. Beichuan trying to get into the bits. 3k on the Baron as Beichuan enters and he finds a spear on ZDZ. Ucal falls, but look at the lightning chaining across the team. Baron taken by MilkyWay, but can he survive? TT try and chase for more. Baron taken for 2 kills.
2 kills, and Ucal can't quite thread the needle. He goes in too early. FPX walk away once again in one of these games by trading the Baron for a number of kills, but not really enough for TT to feel satisfied with it. They will be satisfied with that soul, so in terms of the grand objective trades, I will just err to the side of TT, I think, from this. Which one are we going back to? Going back towards the Baron. We won't see that dragon fight. This is all Deokdam. All Deokdam. Gets his own artificial choke point set up, puts down that minefield, and gets a whole load of cooldowns down. Ucal goes in very aggressively here, but he goes too early. Feather's going in, but you can see Care. He threads the needle himself, so he's okay. All right, Ucal's not got any support next to him. But luckily for FPX, they deal with not just Ucal, but they also get that smite as well. That was a bit of a burger flip.
Yeah, he didn't actually quite get this right. I think, oh, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure who got it, to be honest. Maybe it was MilkyWay that got the smite. It's all getting a bit chaotic in this game. It started so slow compared to the rest of the series as well. I feel like this has been a series that has been really back and forth in the early games, really just battling in and out. He's just going to get sent back in by Hoya. And in the meantime, Ucal trying to push in the bottom lane. Unfortunately, he's all out of minions. Deokdam making short work of it.
He's all out of bubblegum. He's going to try and get himself maybe that in a turret. You can see Hoya, he used that wave just to make... Well, he doesn't exactly have much wave clear as the Poppy. Especially not against the Baron buff. So he used that ultimate before to make sure that Care couldn't walk up with the 5 grubs and the Baron buff. It will slow the tower take by a wave. That means that Ucal can even this tower trade up a little bit. That's fine. It's going to be gold actually shared between a couple of members, I think, on that top side as well. So it's going to be more nucleated gold onto Ucal. He's also going to stick around for another bomb on this bot side. So he has teleport. He can get himself to where he wants as well. In terms of the grand power play of the Baron, I think TT are okay with this. They are going to be down some gold, but it can't be that bad.
Deokdam nearly caught by the solar flare, but gets the satchel charge. Feather not letting him get away. Dives further in, but the rest of the team are not on board with the play. Disruption within the TT ranks.
Ucal.
They just lose their support. Ucal behind everyone and decides he doesn't want to be behind everyone anymore. And FPX just get a freebie.
Yeah, FPX, they just hold the line, and Feather goes in way, way, way out of sync with the rest of his team, and now suddenly you have lost a kill against the Baron. That is the big no-no against Baron. You lose members with that. That's a big problem. It's going to be an inhib. I don't know if it's more than that, but it's going to be at least inhib, maybe even 2.
If they find a fight, it could be more. Hoya looking, hunting on this front line, but Feather's not up for another 5 seconds. Inhib taken in the mid lane, and FPX decide that's enough. They don't want to over push. Remember, if they win this, they move on in playoffs, and they don't want to play a risky game.
They do not. So FPX, they walk away with decent power play after that. Yes, I think Hoya's initial play to delay that top lane push helps TT, but kind of fumbled the landing. He didn't find that fight in the mid lane. Again, just really poorly timed from Feather going in there, which is not what you want to see. Feather, he's been fantastic as a developmental prospect. His second year within the LPL, was on Rare Rats in the year before this, and I think he's reached new heights here on TT, but that really wasn't necessarily what you want to see out of him. We now get ourselves to the point where Elder Dragon will be spawning in 2 minutes. Baron will be up in the next 2 as well. So TT, they are not done with their macro trials, and I do have to say I am trusting FPX more and more as the game goes on. Need we forget, FPX took LNG to the late game and beat them. They've taken all of their wins, basically, have gone to the hyper late game within that Ascension group, and I think TT, now they need to really start perking their ears up. This is going to be dangerous. FPX around 35 minutes are a different team completely.
Do you know my favorite fact about my favorite thing about that LNG fact, that they managed to take them to the late game and win that? Well, Gala's on LNG, and do you know, before TT became TT, the only time this squad made it to playoffs was 2019. Guess who was in the bot lane? It was Gala and Mark were that bot lane on side
Have
of
you
Dragon.
got like a little detective board, like on the background of those like pieces of strings right here? This is why they're gonna make it against Gala. They beat Gala.
FPX are just specifically good against players that are on and have been on LNG, I guess. Yeah.
Well, this is the Elder Dragon, not the Pseudo Dragon, but hey, maybe there's a connection there too. I think TT are a little bit slow towards the spot side again, and I again really need to put the point here. FPX have been better in the late game typically. They have been better in the macro here as well. It only takes one moment of miraculous nature from TT to make this work again. They have the Hex Soul. That's huge. They have a huge bullet time, but it's going to be really hard to get their way into the river. This Ziggs is doing absolute work. Deokdam, the poke is really obnoxious.
I mean, FPX are just going to push mid. I'm not sure Hoya can hold off the super minions by himself here. But Care doesn't have TP available. Elder spawning, TT. They've come from Group Nirvana. They've come as they are, but FPX do have a gun. And they're looking to pull the trigger on this Elder Dragon. ZDZ looking to be the front line. He's on that blast cone, ready to jump into the fray as Hoya is clearing the wave still. AK on the Elder, and it feels like TT can't make a decision. They're stuck. They don't know how to progress, and their health bars are slowly being chunked out. Hoya gets it, sends two away. No smite in the pit. This could be the moment for TT to find their miracle. They get the Elder, and they get a bonus on top. Care falls. FPX sent away as Ucal once more onto Deokdam. He can't find it, but TT, even a recall is enough.
It is TT, get the Elder, they clutch it out, they're from the Group Nirvana and they are in bloom in that fight at least. FPX, they will get themselves the Baron off of this. It's not necessarily going to be a clean trade for TT. Deokdam sniping out Beichuan is also going to add a little bit of a concern there for TT, not there to potentially force a fight somewhere else. The Hex Gate's coming into play now as well. Feather very nearly landing this. They might just fancy themselves a 4v5 with the Elder buffing them up.
They're called ThunderTalk, but with Hex Soul and Elder, it's more like a lightning laugh at this point. TT on the cusp. If they can find this Baron, still 18 seconds on Beichuan is hard without your jungler. But with Elder, I feel they could maybe just posture. The problem is the poke from Deokdam is so hard to deal with.
Whereas on the other side, you don't have your poke monster, you don't have the Nidalee, and Beichuan has hit a couple of really good spears. The last kill in that fight was from a long-range spear with the Elder on top of it. He's back up again now. He won't have the Elder because he died, and then loses that buff as well. TT, Elder, and the Hex Soul, so big combat stats. It says something about how FPX are playing around this poke and also playing around their macro, that these kinds of buffs aren't ending the game for TT. I actually think FPX, I think they're pretty happy with how a lot of this is played out, but now Baron has been spawned. Baron still up, but the Elder on TT.
Hoya massively chunked bombs flying in. FPX, they don't want a straight up 5v5. Feather does. Forces out the Dominus, but Baron taken by TT. FPX clearing minion waves to try and make sure that no objectives can be pushed in the next 40 seconds while Elder's still in play.
And you know what we were saying before this, how Hextech Rift has changed the game. I think that FPX get that Dragon if it's not a Hextech Rift. I don't think they could have got towards that top side in time without those gates to be able to stop that Baron. They do, and that means that they get the Elder and they get the Baron. Hoya, oh my god, the difference between him on the Necton and the Poppy cannot be overstated. Comes through to a huge ultimate where MilkyWay can't get into the pit as easily. He has to flash back over and it comes down to a straight smite fight. The bullet time buys a whole load of space here as well. And that spear gets the extra kill. Absolute snipe into the backline. TT, that might be the clutch moment they were waiting to bring this to a game 5.
Beichuan brings out the Nidalee in game number 4, gets the smite off for the Elder Dragon, and then gets a perfect max range spear onto Care on the back of it as well. He's been ahead the entire game. He is still 2,500 gold up individually in that jungle role. You can see it in his items. Dark Seal on 2 stacks. I don't think we see a Medjai's this game. I don't think the game is going to go on long enough for us to see a Medjai's. But this is easily the longest game we've seen in the series.
That it is. And, you know, typically we've said, FPX, they're the clutch late game team. The thing about late games, hyper late games, they are far from a solved question. They are not a perfect science. So FPX, they've shown some good movements in that before, but this is playoffs, baby. This is where magic comes to rear its head. TT, they're pushing in with that Elder, they don't have, well, with the Baron, they don't have that Elder right now, so the combat buff is gone slightly down. They still have that Hexal. Is that enough to push in for an inhib?
And I'll tell you what, TT, they don't have perfect macro, but they do have a bit of mojo, don't they? We've seen the negative side of the mojo mostly today, with 1xN eating in and such like. But perhaps they can bottle lightning here. Perhaps they can find their moment and push us to 5 games. Yeah. They're on the cusp. They're trying to break into the base, but yet to take an inhibitor. Ooh. Now is their chance as 1xN moves into the mid lane here. Ucal pressuring in the top side in the meantime, and it will be 1 tower down.
1xN walking up very aggressively. Level 18s for the, well, pretty much everyone, but supports beyond this point too. It means max range Tristana, means very, very powerful Miss Fortune on the other side too. That Bloodthirster helping soak up some of that poke, and eventually it's going to be 2 inhibitor turrets down. Ucal starting to flex the muscles.
Hoya spins his Poppycopter, does not fire the ult off, so low cooldown for that one, but the 2 inhibs are taken. TT very happy with the fact that they got those objectives with no team fight involved. They're very okay with not fighting and just taking those objectives away. Now control is very much in their favor with Elder spawning in 1:20.
So those inhibitors being down at that time point is really, really important, because that means that the super minions are going to start crashing into, well, sadly for FPX, the inhibitor and the lane furthest away from the dragon as it spawns. You're going to get them coming through, and someone's going to have to go respond to them. You do have triple teleports, you do have good wave clear. You know, it does mean that your setup for this objective is harder. I still think FPX have, on the whole, had good objective setup, but we'll see whether TT have another Poppy Hammer to make the most of it. I think one of the big things in this game now, going towards this objective setup itself, is what are FPX going to do about Hoya's ultimate? That has been the crucial late game advantage, I think, for the side of TT. There's no spell shield to block it right now. You can't really tank it up with someone of your front line as well. I think that's too important. You just got to somehow dodge it. Deokdam does not want to be tanking that with the Banshees.
1xN gets caught by a Swirl Seed. I'm real scared of those Swirl Seeds from MilkyWay at this point. One big sleep could be the end of a player, especially with a Ziggs bomb on top. But 1xN did have that cleanse available, doesn't have to use it in the end. 1xN with a very aggressive Hex Gate here, perhaps looking for some kind of positioning, but no, returns to his team. Maybe a misclick, honestly, based on him moving back in. Just trying to poke away and doing a good job of it. MilkyWay's down to half HP.
That's nasty, and another spear. Beichuan earning his keep here. Here comes Hoya.
This is TT's chance at keeping themselves alive in playoffs. ZDZ gets into the mix, but he's late game Renekton, and he's not doing enough with MilkyWay down. ZDZ and Careful as well, and TT might just have done it. They talk with Thunder, they play with Thunder. Deokdam denied his recall by Feather as the rest of the team look to end the game. TP from Deokdam to try and clear the minion wave. He doesn't have his ultimate though, and Ucal sends him to the fountain. TT have done it. They fight back from the brink and they push us to silver scrapes.
We're scraping silver here. 5 games here on our first round. TT, in only their 2nd ever playoffs, want to make sure they can have their first best of 5 win in playoffs as well. FPX on the other side, they had an early exit in spring. They would absolutely not want to have that in summer as well. Series has been a show of evolution from both teams. I think that the early games from FPX have been rattled by TT, and I think that the macro from TT has been rattled by FPX. I think we've seen some increases in both of those aspects for each team in this series, and now it comes down to one last game in Game 5. The draft will be important, the macro will be important, the early game, and all the learnings you've taken from this series will come to a head.
Honestly, I feel like the biggest difference for TT in this late game versus the other late games, they just didn't fight. Just fight less, it turns out, works better for TT.
That's not the LPL way!
It's really not, but it might just be the way to a victory for TT. We are going to 5 games. We're going to silver.